Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, the camera's over there. I'm going to record it, and I'm using these microphones here. So be careful over here. One of my good friends accidentally ended up unplugging that. So I had to re-record a portion of the concert. So anyway, thank you all for coming. I really appreciate it. I know you're braving the heat and the traffic in some cases.
It's 68 degrees.
It was really hot this afternoon. And this is my concert of mostly obscure music. Even if you are a fan of classical music, you have likely not heard of most of these composers or these pieces.
I know Diversions.
You do?
It almost was my disco solo.
No, that's a different diversion.
Are you serious?
I'm
oh,
serious.
My Michael Gould probably. Never mind.
Yeah, different diversions.
I hated it.
Really?
I hope this one's better. No.
So, all right, what I had been doing for this piece was I would play the whole piece without stopping. But I think what I'm going to do now, and I want to get your opinion at the end, is I'm going to play the first movement and then talk a little bit about the music, and then play the second movement and then talk a little bit about the music. You're okay with that? All right, and I'm going to turn off the air conditioning because it makes noise, and it will get hot in here. So I apologize for that. But here is the first movement of the Diversions. So, How did I discover this piece? So the truth is that I was having dinner with a friend of mine at his house, my friend Lucas, who's come to some of the Sag Harbor Community Band concerts. And he's not a fan of classical music, but he knows that I am. And this is back in 2018. And so he's got the classical music station playing on his satellite TV. And we're having dinner, which I believe was pizza. And I heard this piece in the background. I was like, what is that piece? And it turned out to be the Impromptu by Alden Carpenter. And I'd never heard the piece. I'd never heard of the composer. And so I learned that piece in a concert in 2019, and I performed it. And I always wanted to find another piece or set of pieces by this composer because I really like this stuff. And then about a year ago, this piece, The Diversions, just popped up on my YouTube feed. And I've been obsessed with it ever since. So here is the second movement of The Diversions. So before I go on with this piece, this composer, Alden Carpenter, is actually most famous not for a piece of music that he wrote, but for the fact that he used the word jazz in the title of one of his pieces. And he was the first person to do that. So he wrote these in the 1920s. And jazz was a popular music genre at the time. But nobody called their music jazz, and he was the first person to do that. And by the way, nobody knows where the word jazz comes from. There are theories about where it comes from, but nobody knows for sure. And by the way, one of the things that I like about this piece is that there's 5 movements, and they're all really different. And I'm going to address the trombone in a little while. Don't let me forget. Here's the third movement. So with the fourth movement of this piece, when I read about Alden Carpenter's biography, I sort of felt like I'm a little bit similar to him. You know, he went to Harvard. He did not make his living as a professional musician. He worked for his family's shipping company. And he also, his first wife passed away, and then he remarried, and he had a daughter with her, and they lived in Chicago. And his second wife founded the Art Institute in Chicago, and it's still there. So here's the fourth movement of this piece. We come to the last movement, and this is where the trombone comes in. So, when you have a multi-movement work like this, ideally, you know, the movements are supposed to fit together, and when you get to the last movement, whatever, like, questions, and I'm talking musical questions, were posed by the first few movements, they're supposed to be resolved in the last movement. And, like, Beethoven does this really well in his famous Fifth Symphony. When you get to the end of the last movement, all of the musical questions that he asks, he answers in the last movement. One of the pieces that I think fails at this is Mahler's Third Symphony, which is the longest piece in the repertoire. It's like an hour and 45 minutes. And it's amazing, The first movement is one of my favorite pieces of all time, and it itself is about 35 minutes long, and it has the longest trombone solo ever, and it's great. But the questions, the musical questions he poses, are not really resolved by the remaining 5 or 6 movements in that piece, and it always has bothered me. And one of the things that I like about this piece is that the questions that he asks are answered in this last movement. So, see if you agree. Here's the last movement of the Diversions. you. So that's the diversions, and now we're going to switch